Hi, everyone. My name is Sydney Sampson. My pronouns are they, them. I am a current software engineer at Accenture, and I am also the CEO at my own company called Ship Tech Prints, where I specialize in printing and designing apparel for all companies, such as small companies, big tech companies, to individual businesses who are just now trying to grow in the industry. So today, I will be giving you guys a talk talking about how to accelerate your tech career with open source. So today we will walk through all of the steps on how you can find a team, how you can actually go out and find problems in the world, from as big problems to small problems, and actually create a solution to solve these problems. Now, as you all know, right, there's millions of projects that we can do. There's millions of projects that we can join and become a part of. But the projects that you actually start, or the projects that you join with your fellow peers or other friends that are doing cool things, the projects that you join specifically is what kind of sets you different from the rest. And those projects, whether you know it or not, they actually carry with you for your entire career. So, me personally, just to give you a little background about myself, I have already told you that I'm a current software engineer at Accenture, and I also run my own company as an apparel designer. So, for me, how I got into tech was because of open source. And it's a crazy story, but it's real. And once I realized, like, to me, joining an open source project or starting an open source project when you're just now trying to break into tech, or you're already in and you're trying to get to the next level, to me, open source is like the number one way to do that. So with me actually creating an open source project while I was in boot camp learning how to code, it set me different. And that project was actually something that I was able to show, when I was interviewing for Accenture. But not just that, the fact that I started my own company, which ended up now being an open source project as well. To me, both of those things is what opened up so many opportunities for my career. So let's dig in. So a quote that I just want to start off today and just getting everybody's, in the motion and getting everybody on one accord is this quote by Henry Ford that says, "Coming together is a beginning, staying together is progress, and working together is success." To me, that is open source. So what is open source? I use this hashtag called community source because open source to me means community. Open source means a public project that is open to everyone and anyone who can come and kind of help collaborate on one project with the different skill sets that everyone has. Not just that, this project is always open, to be scaled. So, say, for example, I wanted to start a project with just two individuals, right? And when we first started the project, we had plans on trying to do something very small with the project, and then the project ended up being bigger than what we imagined. So then we had to get more engineers, bring more people in, and then we're like, okay, we thought we were done with this project. Now we want to implement something new. Now we want to, have these people start building these new things. Open source is always evolving forever. And I think that's the power of open source and the impact that it has on you as an individual and you as a person and as an engineer. So why is open source important? Open source gives everyone an opportunity to show what they have. So as I mentioned in the beginning, I was someone who, just started breaking into tech. I was a boot camp grad, and as a boot camp grad, we struggle with finding impactful projects that we can do, or finding, opportunities to get us to the next level. So open source is very, very, very crucial to someone who is just getting started and they need something on that resume to show that they know how to, work with the team. But not only work with the team, they know how to actually implement code and take feedback, respond well to code reviews and adjust after that. So to me, open source is important because specifically it gives you an opportunity to show what you got. What makes a strong open source project? Now, this one right here, this is a funny one, right? Because you have so many people in the world who want to start projects, and that some people think it's easy versus some people think that it's very hard. But in my opinion, it's both, right? Open source can be very easy if you did, all the planning, you have a strong team, everybody's working together, you don't have tickets just sitting in the backlog forever. You guys are working in sprints, you guys are moving things along. And it can be complex and hard when you don't have that structure. You didn't do all of the research that you needed to do in the beginning. And not just that, your project is not scalable. So if you can make sure that you do, your research in the beginning, you have a strong team, you have a purpose, driven project where you're not just building in circles, you're actually building something that can solve a problem, that can appeal to, the masses of whatever department, you're building this project for. As long as you have that strong content, you have strong people, as in strong engineers and dedicated people who want to help ship this product. And not just that, as long as your project is scalable, as in it might be, one phase in the beginning that actually might get transitioned into something else months later, but you have to be ready for those changes, but not just that, your project has to be ready for those changes. So how can open source help your career? I've been giving you hints so far, and we've only been, going for almost about 10 minutes now. So open source can really, really, really help your career by, number one, what I said before, is giving you that opportunity, giving the world a chance to see how you build and what you can build when you're not actually getting paid. Some open source projects can end up being paid, but not all of them are, right? Usually an open source project starts off something small, open to the community, to the public, where everybody can build and ship product. But you being able to have a strong open source project on your resume and being able to work on a team, no matter how much code you ship, even if you're not even an engineer on this project, even if you're a project manager on this project, or even if you're just someone that helps do research for the project, you can be a UX UI designer for the project, you can be a documentation engineer for the project. Like, there's so many different things that you can do to help build a project that's not always just engineering, right? And whatever impact you can make on that project, that's experience. That stuff matters, and employers and managers, they're looking at those things. So I always recommend folks, like, as I mentioned, and I'm going to keep saying it, folks that are just now trying to break into tech, folks that have been in tech for a little while and are trying to get into that next opportunity. Open source, open source, open source. You'll thank me later, because like I mentioned before, open source gave me my introduction to tech. And without open source, I don't even know how easy it would have been for me, because to land my first job, considering that it was not easy, it was super hard. But the fact that I had a very strong open source project that I managed from beginning to end, I actually had a real client that came to me with this issue that they wanted me to build. this just set me different from all of my peers in the interviewing process. So I just want to highlight that and let you guys know how important open source is. And open source wholeheartedly, 150% can help your career if you want it to. So what are the steps to create an open source project? So here I've listed out a few things. There's multiple other things that we need to do. And I'm going to actually walk through some of these things with you today so you can see full front, what it's like to go through the motions and work on building that project. So some of the things that I have listed here are picking an issue. So that would be like the first thing. Figure out what's going on, what is something that you want to solve. And then from there, you start, brainstorming and figuring out how can you actually solve that problem. And then from there, you continue your research. So as in you start actually doing a deeper dive, researching that problem, of actually figuring out if it is a real problem. And then if that problem is something that actually you can provide a solution to, right? Because what's the point of just creating a project that doesn't solve anything or doesn't make anybody feel better or that doesn't do anything for the world? To me, that's a pointless project. So after you pick your issue and you start brainstorming, you start researching the problem, the solution, I also recommend you research your competition. So anytime you're building a new project, starting a company, whatever that may be, you need to know, who you're competing against, right? You need to know, like, okay, am I building something that is legal? Like, am I allowed to build something like this? Is a competitor out there, building something? Do they have a patent on something that I'm not supposed to build? You have to know these things because you don't want to get into legal trouble at the same time, even though your project can just be something on a very small scale. You always want to do all of your research to make sure that you not only dot all of your I's and cross your T's, but you just want to make sure that you're doing everything you need to do to build a strong foundation for your project. Because the biggest thing that I see happen all the time is that some folks, when it comes to building a brand or a company, they don't do their research beforehand and they end up in a loop, where either somebody already has the name, somebody has already created a project like this and have already targeted this project towards a specific audience, and that audience could be your specific audience. So it's like from that point, why would you continue? You can either continue to build just for the fun of it, or, you would have to rescope your entire project. So if you do all of these research from the beginning, you'll know exactly what's going into it and what's coming out of it from the gate. So after that researching phase, I would suggest you get together with your founders or your group or whatever and try to come up with a name. So not only, a name for the project, but a name for your team. The name for your team may be different from the name for your project. And this all depends on what's the end goal. And then from there, you guys can go ahead and create a logo, build out some wireframes, build some strong documentation, and then, of course, build that strong team. So today, I will walk you through each of these steps one by one, because I really want to show you guys how to build an open source project. And yeah, building projects are very hard. Yeah, building projects can come with a lot of stress. Like, it can come with a lot of tears, a lot of late nights, a lot of code getting broken. But that's the fun part about being in tech, is the fact that you can break things, but then you can fix things, then you can break things again, and then you can figure out a solution to fix things. So I hope you guys enjoy this demonstration and this demo that I'm going to give you today. of how to go step by step through all of these things when it comes to building out that open source project. So let's just go into all of these steps and let's go more into detail of what everything includes. So the first thing that I mentioned on my list is how to pick your issue. So when it comes to picking your issue or picking the problem that you want to solve, what I usually do when I'm thinking of how I want to solve a problem, I sit back and think of like, I go down a rampage. So usually I'll start with a list of like 5 to 10 things of things that either me and my friends, me and my tech friends, my group, of all of the people that I manage, some of my coworkers, whatever that may be. I take a list of like 5 to 10 things and I just like weigh everything out, write everything out. Like, okay, one of the issues can be, trying to end poverty in my community. Like, how can I, get poor families access to healthy food, healthy resources? Another project could possibly be how to, get my family to save water. Another project can be how to maybe like how to maybe get the trash guy to create a faster process when it comes for him picking up trash. Like maybe we decide that we want like a QR code or something scanned when they pick up the trash, or like, just anything like that. You just weigh out like certain problems that are going on in your life, your friend's life. You just write those things down. And then from those things, you kind of go through that list and you decide like, okay, which one of these projects am I the most passionate about? You get like the top 3 projects that you're the most passionate about and that you can actually see yourself making a difference in. And then out of those top 3, either by yourself or with your team, you can actually like, cross eliminate and figure out which is the most project that you feel like you can have the most impact on or that you can build and scale within the next 3 months. Okay, then you decide which project can you only build and scale like within 6 months, which one in 9 months, right? And that project that you see that you can actually build and scale within 3 months, I would say would be probably the best bet for your first project, right? Considering that shipping projects are hard. And a lot of times when we go into trying to build a project, we don't weigh out all of the factors from beginning into end. We just say, hey, I'm going to build a project. I'm going to do open source. I'm going to do this, get this experience. This is my tech stack. This is what I'm doing. I have a team. We have a logo. We get started. We start building out, the basics of the foundation of the code. And then the code is stuck there forever. And that happens so much. I am, a victim of that, right? Like I've started multiple projects while I was in school, and it didn't take me until after I finished school and after I realized the impact of starting and not finishing projects has on my career. I was like, okay, I would rather build less projects than having, build less projects that I can actually follow through and finish than just having hundreds of projects that are stuck and not getting, any progress made upon. So again, to pick your issue, you write down a list of things that you want to solve or problems. Write down a list of problems that is affecting you in your everyday life, your friends' life, your coworkers' life. And from there, you can kind of like build your project around those things. So then once you come up with the different types of problems that are out there that you want to solve, that's when you can come up with a solution. So for example, we mentioned before that say, I guess the problem would be, in low income neighborhoods, families don't have access to healthy produce, healthy, resources. So the solution to that would be try to create a project where we can either, go into the schools and bring produce, or we can, set up shop um, certain time of day, or we can literally, try to get communities to invest in building produce stores to put in these low income, um, poverty risen, neighborhoods where everybody can have access to fresh produce. Now, this is a project that is like, evolves the macro world. Like, you don't have to create projects that big. You can create projects super small. Like, you can create a project that was like a scientific calculator for, your AP class or your statistics class in college. Like, your projects can be as little as you want to as macro as you want them to be. I just always like to think big. So many of the projects that I've built were like projects to solve major issues, whether that was in the community, in my family, in my neighborhood, in the tech industry, whatever that may be. Next, after you've already kind of, weighed out your problems, you've already kind of like decided on certain solutions, you want to research. So before you make those finalized decisions of what your project is actually going to be and what you're going to build, you want to do that research. So as in, how can this project help the community? You weigh out your pros and you weigh out your cons. What are the benefits of starting this project? Who does this project help? Exactly, like, what are the steps, to get this project initiated, and not just that, like, what is going to be the outcome. So to me, the problem, let's go back to the problem that we started talking about in the beginning, is that in low income neighborhoods, they don't have access to, fresh produce and healthy resources. So my solution to that project was to try to implement, produce stores instead of having liquor stores on every corner in the hood. Why don't we create produce stores on every corner in the hood where families can get produce and fresh juice and, fresh whatever they need, fresh, for a low amount of money. That to me is something that would be very beneficial, right? So we discovered the problem. I kind of gave you a solution, and the how will this help the community? It will help because it will give low income residents access to, produce. It will also make it so folks don't have to travel miles and miles and miles, which we usually never do. We don't want to have to travel miles to go get something healthy. If we're hungry at the time and our kids are hungry, we would rather just go to McDonald's or go to something that's, feasible, that's not too far for us. A lot of us in low income neighborhoods, we don't have cars. A lot of us have to ride the bus. So just imagine, you being in a low income neighborhood, you not really have money, not having access to fresh produce. And not just that, when you want fresh produce or you're hungry, the only thing you can get to is a liquor store or McDonald's. So I just gave you multiple reasons of how us creating this project, even if we started in, just one low income neighborhood, like my neighborhood where I'm from in Oakland, California, East Oakland, California, even if we started in just, specific community, specific zip codes in East Oakland, that would already make a big difference, right? So then from there, we start weighing out the cons. Like, will this project be supported by the community? So I may be trying to create a project that's actually not feasible. Like, where will I get the funding, right? Like, would people even want this fresh produce? Like, do they prefer something different? Like, you have to weigh out those things. Also, do people disagree with my solution? because that's a big thing, considering that this project that I would be building here would be community driven. And then not just that, is there competition? If so, who? As of right now, I don't know any competition, maybe, from the top of my head. That's something that I would have to research when it comes to the different, neighborhoods. I feel like right off the bat, my competition would be the liquor store. Because if I don't know, one thing I've noticed growing up is that in every hood that I've ever lived in every block that I've lived on, there was always a liquor store, at the end of the block. And in that liquor store, they sold liquor and tobacco and candy and chips and snacks. There was almost never a piece of fruit or a piece of vegetable that I would be able to go in and get from that store. So, you never know. That might be set up for a reason. They might not want us to have access to fresh produce in our neighborhood. So this project right here would be something that would be scalable for years to come, worldwide, all over the place, because that's something that I've noticed that is very common. So this would be a great project. So if anybody is out there and it is listening to this talk and you're hearing to kind of how I came up with this solution and how I'm going about this, that's exactly what you do when it comes time to you building out your project and doing what you want to do. So next, after we've already kind of did our research, we figured out our problem, we figured out a solution, now it's time to actually name our project. So when you're naming your project, you can usually kind of name your project off of like what it is. So like, for example, right now we're talking about building a project to help bring fresh produce to, low income neighborhoods. So something I can kind of like name this project would be like enhance your body, or food for the soul, or greens in the hood, something like that, like where it like gives them an intro of what we're doing. Sometimes though, people create names for projects that have nothing to do with the team at all. That has nothing to do with the project they're building, and that's totally okay. When it comes to naming your project, that is left up to you. I just always, make folks come down to the question of, does it fit? And you want it to fit. Like, I feel like that's so important. And if your project name doesn't fit, it kind of throws everything off. So just think about that when you are building your project. Next, after you kind of create a name and you kind of know what you're building, that's when you can go and create a logo. So one thing that I've learned as being an entrepreneur over the last few years is that there are so many tools that you can use for free and for a very cheap price when it comes to building projects, building brands, building teams, and building companies. And one company, one brand that I've used when it comes to building logos over and over and over has been Canva. I've built hundreds of logos, and I've only been using Canva for maybe a year and a half to 2 years now, I'm not sure, but I've built so many logos. I started so many brands, and I'm sure there's multiple other ones out there, but Canva is one of my favorite. So for any of you guys that need to build a logo for cheap, you don't have a lot of money to get started for your open source project or for your company, Canva is not my number one go-to. And I also, during my demo today, I'm going to show you guys how to use Canva to build a logo. All righty, so after we actually build that logo, this, goes along with the planning process, right, of choosing your tools. So when you're building a project, you can't just say, I want to build this project. I want to solve this issue. Here's my team name, here's my logo, but how is it going to get built? So that's, to me, that's the number one mistake that a lot of people do. They kind of think too far ahead, right? They think about the end goal and how they can implement this project and what it looks like and what they want it to do, but they don't actually really do a deep dive into how are they going to make that happen, what tools they're going to use to accomplish that goal. So me personally, I make sure that whatever project I'm building, we figure this out in the beginning, right? So when it comes to tools, you have so many tools. You have source control tools, project management tools, tools for documentation, and etc. So when it comes to source control, two tools that I use is GitLab and GitHub. So you'll have to like figure out what do you want to use for source control, right? Are you going to use GitLab or are you going to use GitHub? You have to know these things as you're implementing this project. Next, you have to figure out what are you going to use as your project management tool. There are so many project management tools. I know at work, in my day job as an engineer, we use Jira. But me personally, with two of the open source projects that I have built so far, we've used Trello, ClickUp, and Notion. And out of Trello, ClickUp, and Notion, my number one favorite, even out of Jira, my number one favorite is ClickUp. I'm going to show you how to use GitHub today. I'm going to also show you how to use ClickUp. And ClickUp has been one of my favorite project management tools because you can do everything that Jira, Trello, and Notion can do all in one. Not just that, you can actually integrate your GitHub/GitLab, you can integrate Trello as well. And not only can you use, ClickUp for a Kanban board, you can use ClickUp to nest your documentation, you can build dashboards on ClickUp, you can have calendars for the whole team to see, what's going on in your organization. They even have a chat tool. They even have it where you can connect your Slack channel to ClickUp, and every time somebody like moves a ticket over or make adjustments to a ticket, you can get those notifications in your Slack channel. So it's just so cool. I really, really, really love ClickUp, and I really enjoy, all of the opportunities and the tools that ClickUp has in just their own tool. So yeah, you need a project management tool so that way you guys can keep on track, know what's getting worked on, know what's in the backlog. I think GitHub actually does have that option as well, where you can build a Kanban board on GitHub. You just need a team to help you. So the next thing is like documentation. So like, what do you want to use for documentation? There's a nice tool that's out there that's very popular called Docusaurus. I don't know if any of you have heard of it, but Docusaurus is very popular when it comes to building out docs for your site. I haven't used Docusaurus yet personally, but I hear it is very, very popular. So for me, so far, what I've used for docs is either Google Docs or I'll create markdown files in my GitHub repository. So not only do we have to choose our tools, we need to choose our stack, because how are we going to build something without a technology stack? So when it comes to picking your stack, that is very, very hard. I can honestly say picking your stack is hard. I'd also say that when it comes to you and your team picking your stack, I don't think you should do it alone. I think that's something that you should like vote on. And also, one thing that I've learned is that when doing an open source project, if you start off with 5 people and you have 4 engineers that know JavaScript, why would you choose to do a project in Ruby if you have 5 engineers and 4 of them know JavaScript? To me, the majority wins, especially when you're working on open source, because you don't want to create all of these tickets, of stuff that needs to get worked on, and nobody can ship code because they're actually, trying to learn and, use Udemy and use Google and Stack Overflow, whatever tools that people use to learn. But you don't want folks to have to learn a new stack when you're already in the building phase. If you guys have months to prepare and you guys kind of scope this project over a span of a few months, then no problem. Take however long you need, give your team those resources so they can learn the material, whatever it means. But I definitely recommend you always choosing a tech stack that the majority know. So like one of the projects that I'm building right now, we're doing for our back end, we're doing Ruby on Rails, and the front end, we're doing React. We chose that stack because a lot of my engineers actually went to Flatiron School, the boot camp that I went to, and their base knowledge was off of Ruby on Rails. So I'm like, okay, perfect. We have a whole backend team that can spin up the API. And then not just that, we have about 10 engineers on the front end that, know React and can build in React, frontwards and backwards. And they're very good at JavaScript as well. So to me, it made sense to go ahead and do Ruby on Rails on the back end and React on the front end. Your team may be different. So you need to make sure you weigh out all of your options. That way you're not, creating this project that's so much out of scope and no one can actually meet the deadlines and get the tickets done. So project planning. This is the most important part. So out of all of the things that we walked through today, those things come all together when you're building your project planning. So usually like when I'm drafting a project and kind of putting my ideas together, I'll use some scratch paper, and then I'll also get me started like a Google Doc where I'll share it with the decision makers on my team, and we'll all start like simultaneously, fill it in the document, or one person to scribe and everybody else will talk. But Google Docs is definitely a good starter to get your documentation started of what you're building. And then after you kind of go through and you build out that project and you're kind of building out exactly what you want, you have your logo, your problem, your solution, your team, or whatever, you start building your wireframes. So one of the tools that I gave you before, which is very cool, I'm giving you some gems here, so I hope you write notes. But one of the tools that I gave you before was Canva. You use Canva for building the logo, and then Figma is like your best friend because you go to Figma when you're actually ready to start building out these, different prototypes, the different wireframes. And not just that, like, I don't know if any of you know, but I know people that have shipped projects and actually have like got funding, for their open source projects or for their projects, period, from just having strong wireframes. That is so important. So something that I feel like that helped me out so much, because I'm an engineer, I don't really have a designer eye. I'm not good at designing. So that's something that I always knew I would lack in when it came to building my projects. So far for this last project I built, I was able to find a UX UI designer that was awesome, right? She came in, she figured out what we were building. She just came in and started just building all of our wireframes. She went Figma crazy. And the whole team is looking at her like, how is she doing this? What is she doing? But that's the victory of being in tech and having people that have all of these different skill sets. It's the power of open source, the power of community source, and the power of bringing people together. Everybody can take their skill set and build something miraculous. So once you have your foundation and all of this, as you're kind of finalizing everything, you start kind of mending the team together. So you start taking everybody and figuring out who will manage what, who will be the project leaders, who will be the managers, who do you want to actually build this project with, right? So by now, after we went through all of these steps, you may have done all of these steps up until now by yourself. Or you may have had maybe 3 or 4 other members already that you gathered and you did all of these steps up until now. But once you get to this step, when everything is like finalized, this is kind of like the important part where you figure out how many people you're going to need to ship. How many people are you going to need to deploy? How many people are you going to need to maintain this project? Like, is this project something that we're just building over 3 months and that's it? Is this project something that we want to scale for 9 months? Is this project something that we want to scale for years to come? This is where you figure that out. Now, we then went through all of the steps of figuring out what our problem is, how do we actually create a solution. We built some wireframes, we started doing some basic documentation, we built our team, we understand our stack, we also figured out all of our different tools that we're going to use to build this project. So now it's time to get down and dirty. So as I mentioned before, I have a few different resources that I want to show you guys so you guys can learn how to build your project. I think we have about almost 20 minutes left. So let's see what I can do in 20 minutes. And just to start, since we're already on that track, I think I like the idea of where we started, of what the problem was. The problem of it being that in low income neighborhoods, they don't have access to produce. So let's just build our project around that. I like that. All righty. So let's go to our project planning doc. Okay. So the problem that we have is that low income residents, low income residents in poor neighborhoods don't have access to fresh produce. They are more likely to have less healthcare, access to less healthcare. They are more likely to have less access to healthcare and more prone to sickness and poor health. Okay, so that's our problem. The solution to this would be create a project to implement fresh produce stores in poor neighborhoods. Okay. Competition right now, because we don't really have too much time. We have less than 20 minutes. So I'm just going to start off by saying, considering that I grew up in Oakland, in East Oakland, California, and I noticed that on each one of our corners, something that we have are liquor stores. We don't have access to produce. So I'm going to say the competition is the liquor stores on every corner. Okay. So what are the pros of building out this project? The pros of building out this project would be low income residents would now have access to healthy options. They won't have to drive far or to nicer neighborhoods. To get I'm going to say to get fruits and veggies. Okay. One more pro would be individuals would start to feel better about themselves on the inside and out. You already know when you eat better, you start to feel better. Cons of us building this project is that liquor stores not so much would go out of business, but liquor store owners would be upset. Another con would be the community, these poor communities, they might not like this option. They might not want healthy produce in their neighborhood. So the community might not agree with our solution. Not just that, we can also say that another con would be that we might not get approved. We might not get approved for this project by the city. So yeah, when it comes to building projects of this macro size, a lot of things come into factor. I'm not saying that, for your first project, you have to build something like this, but I just wanted to kind of give this as an example of something that is a huge problem, not just in America, but all across in all of the different, ghettos and poor neighborhoods across the world. Like this would help out so much. So let's do something like this so we can see everything. Right now, I'm just making everything bold. Okay. Pros, cons, title, tools, tech stack. And then once we build the logo, we'll add it here, right? Let's work. All right, so the title, I can see, I think something that I said before was like, I'm gonna just say, let's title this project Greens and Greens in the hood. Okay, so for source control by choice, I'm gonna use GitHub. Project management, I told you my favorite tool before was ClickUp. Documentation, for now, we're going to use Markdown. And then for us to chat amongst our open source team of how we'll stay in contact with each other, check on the progress, get all the updates on the code, manage stand-ups and all of that, I like to use Slack. Another one that I've seen a lot of other open source communities they use Discord. So Discord is very popular. It's very much an option out there. So if you're somebody that favors Discord, go right ahead. But I'm a Slack type of individual. All righty. So my tech stack, I mentioned before, Ruby on Rails is my strength. And React has been my, front end. So I would probably do Ruby on Rails for the back end, Ruby on Rails, and it'll be a Ruby on Rails API. Ruby on Rails. Okay, and then my front end, I told you guys before, my front end stack is React. All righty, so we have a project now. Let's read through it and make sure everything makes sense. So the problem that we're solving is that low-income residents in poor neighborhoods don't have access to fresh produce. They are more likely to have less access to healthcare and more prone to sickness and poor health. A solution to this problem would be to create a project to implement fresh produce stores in poor neighborhoods. The competition For me, just off the top of my head, not doing research, would be liquor stores on every corner. Pros of us building this project is that low income residents will now have access to healthy options. They won't have to drive far to nicer neighborhoods to get fruits and veggies. Individuals will start to feel better about themselves on the inside and out. Cons of us building this project is that liquor store owners will probably be upset because either they would lose money, they might be forced to, remove their stores. The community might not agree with our solution, and we might not get approved for the project by the city. So something that I wanted to title this project is Greens in the Hood. The tools that I would use to start building for source control, GitHub, project management, ClickUp, documentation. I'll start with just doing markdown files. And the community chat, we will use Slack. My tech stack would be Ruby on Rails on the back end and React on the front end. Boom. That was like maybe 5 minutes it took us to kind of figure out all of these things. So to me, if you guys want to use this template, or if you guys want to reach out to me on social media, you can find me at Sydney_Sampson on Twitter and LinkedIn. And I actually have my own open source community where we build tons of projects. You can come with us and help work on projects that we're working on. You could come hit me up on social media, let me help you build your own open source project, or you could just come to me and ask me for advice of how I've been able to scale projects and get jobs from open source projects. So now we've done all of our project planning. Now I want to go, we got a name called Greens in the Hood. I'm going to copy this. Now we're going to build a logo. All right, so as I mentioned before, Canva was my go-to when it comes to building a logo. So we're going to do this. Greens in the Hood was our name. And Canva is very user-friendly for those of you who have never used Canva before. All right, Greens in the Hood. So we can do something like this. One thing Canva does have is like elements that you can use. So let's just get like some greens, some leafy greens. Let's just put that for now. Let's do that. Let's maybe come up with a font, a nice font that we can use. And we can actually get rid of these underscores. Okay, so that's not bad. And we can even do something like we can even do like abbreviations. So like say if let's duplicate this box. We can even do like a G, and TH. And let's do like a better font. Okay, so we can do something like that, something real simple, right? So let's create another page. I'll add a page and let's move this abbreviation here. So we'll have this GNTA stands for Greens in the Hood. And for now, we'll use this as our logo for Greens in the Hood, okay? So what I'm gonna do, since we just built this out, I'm gonna go ahead and download this. Let's download it. Let's just do page 1 for now. Let's do we can do a transparent background, it's fine. Usually the transparent background is how you'll send it out to like go for printing or something like that. So let's download that. So you just see me create a simple logo in about 2 minutes with our favorite tool, Canva. Let's go upload this to our project planning document. Right here it says logo. There we go. Greens in the hood. This is coming along nice. I think I might actually want to go implement this, build this project now. Definitely open for some volunteers who want to help me build this. All right, cool. So greens in the hood. This would be our logo. Make this page bigger again. All right, so now we built our logo. The next thing on the agenda after we build our logo is we now have a name, we have a logo. From here, we can kind of go to GitHub and kind of like build, let's build the organization first. Because with that organization, you'll probably have multiple, projects. Alrighty, so organization name is Greens and the hood. Cool. Let's verify our account, pick one square. This is GitHub, by the way. So what I'm doing is creating the organization so all of our projects can live in one place. So pick one square that shows two identical objects. I hope that's not a trick question. All righty, contact email. Let's do let's just do greens in the hood at gmail.com. We can change it later. Greens in the hood at gmail.com. Okay. Let's build it. All right. Okay. So they wanted to just add some things. How many people? Let's see, 1 to 5 open source projects. No. Okay, cool. So now our organization is built. As you see, we have a Greens in the Hood organization. So now what we can do here, the only person on this team is me. So what you can do after you create that organization, we just built a logo. So we can actually add our picture here. Let's see if it'll let us do that really quickly. Downloads. Okay. No, we're not going to get it right now. Okay. But we just built the logo. So because we do have that logo now, which is this right here, this logo, or even if you guys just wanted it to be this with greens in the background, that would be that logo here, right? So say, for example, if we already built the repository, we started doing everything local. I'm going to show you guys really quickly how to build a new repository. So we're going to do create a repository. It's going to be Greens in the Hood. Let's just say, let's do the initials. So Greens in the Hood, this will be the back end. And we can do public, since it is open source and we want people to find out about it. So Greens in the Hood backend. We'll add a README later. We can add a license and all of that. We can do all of that later. So create that repository. And then the good thing here that I really like about GitHub is that when you do create repositories, they give you these different commands that you'll do on your command line. I use VS Code. but you'll do those commands to go ahead and get the project started and get your first commit push to GitHub. So boom, we just walked through how to actually go on GitHub, create the organization, and then go through and create your first repository. And as you see, when you see this that says add teams and collaborators, so you can actually like add your teams and add all of the individuals. You can assign those individuals to specific teams. You can go to your settings and actually like make it so, you know, code reviews are required. Maybe I think for my open source projects, we do 2 code reviews and we actually work on 2 branches. So we actually have everyone working on the dev branch, which is considered the development branch, and the project maintainers, we maintain the main branch. So the dev branch is what everybody kind of works off of and makes their changes. And like once everything is good to go, tested and deployed and all, everything like that, we then go to the main branch for production. So we just walked through how to actually go through the steps, building out the project. We then walked through how to create a logo. I then showed you how to create your organization on GitHub, create your first repository. You'll follow these directions in your command line on VS Code to get the project initiated. And then from there, let's actually go build out our team on ClickUp. So this is our new space. I created it a little while ago, so we can already have this. And one of the first spaces that we'll create, we'll do a list name. Let's just say Kanban. And what I like is this one. So I like to use the board view. And you can simply like actually like change these different areas, and you can actually customize them depending on how your team actually executes and how they build. You can change those things and allow for your team to have, you know, a customizable Kanban board, whether you guys have a backlog, you know, to do or ready for development. Then you have the column that actually says, you know, this is in progress, this is waiting for code review, and this is completed. So you can customize all of those things, have multiple spaces here. Actually, you can create dashboards here for your entire team. And then you can also have a calendar to show, you know, all of the upcoming work and everything you're working on, all those good things. So ClickUp is, you know, you get all my thumbs up for the project management tool. And this is a very good one for you to manage your project on the back end. And then, so now we have our Kanban board of how we're going to manage our project. And then the next thing would be to actually start building out some wireframes. So Figma is what I use when it comes to building out the designs and all of that. I kind of already started kind of building out some things here, building out some shapes. This is a nav bar, and you can just add shapes. You know, if you want a rectangle, build that rectangle. You can even color it. You know, it doesn't go with the color scheme, but just wanted to kind of show you guys what this looks like. Say if we wanted to add some text, and we just said something about if it was like a side nav or something like that. Alrighty, so with this, you can actually build out all of the different pages. So say, for example, if you're just building out a website, you will build out some simple pages of your website. If you were building out a mobile app, you would build out, you know, the different mobile screens for the phone, and vice versa. So now you have all of these tools to build your project. I've showed you how to, you know, go through, come up with your problem, your solution, your stack, and how you want to build it. Then I also showed you how to go ahead and create a logo. Then from there, I went to GitHub, showed you how to create your organization on GitHub, create your first repository. And then from there, I showed you how to utilize ClickUp for your project management tool, and you can add your team all to ClickUp. They have a free tier up into a certain limit where you can add folks and create spaces. So like, for example, this space will probably be the back end. I would call this one like the back end space. Team. And you can give your team unique team names how you want. And then you can also create a new space that says front end team. All right, cool. So now you have two spaces. You have a back end team and they have a Kanban board. And then you'll also have a front end team and we can build out that Kanban board for the front end team too. So now you know how to utilize your project management tool. And then from there, I took you to Figma and kind of showed you how you can kind of implement the different wireframes and design your pages. So this is very helpful for your engineers because your engineers need to know what to build. Like even though they have this, and then once you actually start going deep into building out the different aspects for the front end and the back end of your project, they're going to need a visual. I know I'm an engineer who needs a visual. I can't just, you can't just tell me build this, build this, build this, right? I can build it up until my knowledge of what I think is acceptable and what I think works, but that's not the same for everyone. So I definitely recommend you having some folks on your open source team that can design. For us, we only had like one person who could design things. So without her, we had to, as a collective, come together and kind of build out our wireframes on what we wanted the website to look like. So once you kind of do all of these separate things, it would be so cool to like add all of those links to like your official project planning, or even like what I did for my team. I created a dashboard on ClickUp where I actually put all of the resources for the project on ClickUp. So they have a link to the Figma, they have a link to the logo, they have a link to the Figma designs, they have links to the project planning documents, the PowerPoints, and all of that good stuff is all nested on our dashboard. So with that being said, I hope all of you guys enjoyed my presentation today. I hope all of you guys can actually go back and build your own open source project now. I hope you guys can come together as a collective and, get active in the community, figure out what projects need to be solved, and I hope you get active. So again, this was my talk today on how to accelerate your tech career with open source. I feel like I gave you a deep dive on how to do it, not just how to build an open source project, but how you can actually use these same tools and technologies to build your own company, scale your own career, and help somebody else scale their career. So please find me on Twitter and find me on LinkedIn at Sydney_Sampson. And I hope to hear from you guys soon. Have a nice day and happy holidays.